to heal from your childhood trauma, it is so important for you to heal the inner child. Guess what? A lot of our traumas, a lot of our pains, a lot of our shame, a lot of our condition, they're coming from the inner child. They're coming from that little girl that was wounded, that little girl that was hurt, that little girl that was abused, that little girl that had no love growing up, that little girl that was in a domestic abuse, that little girl that felt frightened all the time. A lot of the traumas is coming from that little girl, not just only little girl, but that little boy too. And for me, my trauma started when my mom died when I was 3 years old. That is when my little girl and the inner child of me really started to feel broken, started to feel like I was not worth it, started to feel like I was not good enough. And as I've grown, that's how I was able to develop people pleasing syndrome. That's how I was able to develop, not really loving myself in the way that I deserved. And because I didn't love myself, and because I've come from a place of rejection, I had a lot of fear about being by myself. I had a lot of fear about not being good enough for anyone. And so what that meant was I stayed in relationships that were toxic, that were not really healthy relationships. So it's very important for you to become the best version of yourself, to heal the inner child. And a lot of people, they feel like that in order for them to really become the best version of themselves, they need to almost wear a mask and pretend that it never happened to them as children. And they feel like, it's a lot more harder to face what happened to them, and it's a lot more easier to pretend that it didn't happen to you as a child. And I feel like that is the mistake that a lot of people make when we want to pretend that it never happened to us, when we want to continue as if there's nothing wrong with us. And it's so, so important for you to visit that inner child. A lot of people have been sexually abused at a very young age, and that's where the trauma starts. And so it's very important for you to visit that space once again, visit that child once again. Just because you have forgotten what has happened to you, or just because you don't really want to face what happened to you, it does not mean that the inner child does not exist. That inner child is still within inside of you. That inner child is still craving for your love and attention. That inner child still needs you to be there for that inner child. Because what happens is we end up abandoning that inner child because we don't want to be associated with that inner child, because we do not like what happened to us as children. We want to move on and we want to forget about it as if it never happened. But the inner child is always going to follow you no matter how far you try to forget, no matter how much makeup you wear, no matter how much, you know, how far you go, like from a country. You might decide that, okay, I'm gonna revamp myself and I'm going to, move to the United States, for example. And in your mind you think that by moving to the United States you are gonna somehow erase the past. That's just not how life works. You can, feel better for a while, but the inner child is always going to remind you of what happened to you. Like the way you feel inside, it is a reminder that the inner child still exists. When you find yourself always feeling sad all the time, feeling depressed all the time, feeling a void inside of you, feeling like, emotional, like there's these emotions that you just don't even know where they're coming from, that those feelings and those emotions, they are coming from the inner child that is inside of you. Those emotions, those feelings, the inner child is trying to get your attention. Like the inner child is saying, you cannot pretend that it didn't happen to you. You cannot move on with your life as if like nothing happened. We need to deal with it. I'm still here. I'm still hurting. I'm still in pain. You might pretend that there's nothing wrong with you, but I cannot move on. I cannot pretend. I need to deal with the situation. So you're very conflicted. There's two conflicting situations happening in your life. The older version of you that wants to move on, and then the younger version of you, the inner child that is inside of you, that wants to deal with it. They want to deal with the hurt. They want to deal with the pain. They want you to be there for them. They want your love and affection. They want you to really sit down and talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's go through it. Yes, what happened was very terrible. What happened was not something that I want to relive again. But unfortunately, in order for you to heal and become the best version of yourself, you need to revisit the pain. You cannot numb the pain and think that you're not going to feel anything. You need to revisit the pain. You need to be triggered. In fact, you need to be triggered. I know a lot of people don't like to be triggered, but being triggered is a reminder of what happened to you. Being triggered is a reminder of the pain that you went through. It's a reminder that there still is healing that needs to be dealt with. It's a reminder that there is something that you need to face. And being triggered is a good thing because it helps you to understand, why you feel the way you feel. A lot of people, they hate being triggered, but actually, I don't mind being triggered because then it makes me check in with myself. It reminds me that I am not really healed. It reminds me that I need more compassion and love towards myself. It reminds me that I need to pay more attention. Like, I shouldn't pretend that I am okay when I'm not okay. That if I'm triggered, I should feel it, but I shouldn't be upset at the fact that I have been triggered, because that trigger is what's going to allow you to revisit that child that is still inside of you. And you need to forgive the inner child because it was never your fault. You might feel like what happened to you was your fault. You might feel like maybe you could have done something different. Maybe you could have stopped it, but unfortunately, nothing you did could have stopped what happened to you. Like it was not you, it was them. They had the issue. They are at fault. They should have never done what they did to you, but unfortunately, they did. And it has affected you as a person, is affected you in terms of like, loving yourself. Because of what happened to you, you're finding it really hard to love yourself. Because of what happened to you, you're finding it really hard to build relationships with other people. Because of what happened to you, you're finding yourself like in a depressive state. You cannot be happy. Whenever you start to feel happy, you feel this guilt inside of you. You feel ashamed for being happy because of what happened to you. And that is nothing to do with you. You need to realize that you it was never something you did. It was always about them. They had issues, but they took it out on you. And I'm so sorry that you went through what you went through. But it's time for you to forgive yourself. That is the first step in healing the inner child. Forgive yourself, because a lot of the times what happens is we